The Trump administration has just announced the seizure of two oil tankers connected to Venezuela. Videos released by U.S. Southern Command and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem reveal the boarding of both ships by the U.S. Coast Guard. Here to discuss this breaking news is The Hill's Deputy Managing Editor, Sarakshi Rai. Hey, Sarakshi, so what do we know so far about these two seizures?
That's right, dude. Stunning development today. The U.S. military seized two oil tankers on Wednesday as it tries to choke off most of the Venezuelan exports of crude oil, including the seizure of a Russian-flagged tanker that had been evading American forces for weeks. Now, this really escalates this confrontation with Moscow after the ouster of its ally, Nicolas Maduro. We know that we saw this military operation to really capture Nicolas Maduro from Caracas over the weekend. And, the military issued a statement saying that the U.S. forces has seized the Russian-flagged vessel in the North Atlantic between Scotland and Iceland for violating U.S. sanctions. Now, it later said in a separate statement that it had apprehended a stateless, sanctioned dark fleet motor tanker, the MT Sophia, in international waters in the Caribbean, where it was conducting illicit activities, and the ship was being escorted to the United States. So the seizure of two oil tankers really dominating the news this morning after those statements from the U.S. military, Drew.
And Sarakshi, one of those tankers named the Bella 1 had been chased by U.S. Coast Guard for weeks now. What can you tell us about how this pursuit finally ended?
That's right. The Coast Guard boarded this Russian tanker after a roughly 2-week assault. Now, we have this information from U.S. officials that have been briefed on the operation. Now, the Coast Guard encountered no resistance or hostility from the crew. Now, this was given to the New York Times on the condition of anonymity to discuss this very sensitive military operation. Now, we've also heard from Russia's Ministry of Transport, who confirmed that the U.S. forces had boarded the vessel in international waters. And they also added in a statement that they had lost all contact with this vessel as well. Now, the Russian state-owned broadcaster RT published images of a helicopter approaching the Russian-flagged tanker, which was being pursued by the U.S. Coast Guard, and said it appeared that the U.S. forces were attempting to board. So some really dramatic images coming from the seizure of this oil tanker. Now, interestingly, this tanker that was seized was known recently as the Bella 1, and is now being called the Marinera. It had been registered as a Russian vessel and flagged as a Russian vessel from December 24th onwards. Now, Russia had sent at least one naval vessel to meet and escort it as well. And this we know from the U.S. official briefed on this operation as well. Now, there were no Russian vessels in the vicinity of this tanker when the Coast Guard boarded the ship, which, really averted the possibility of a standoff between U.S. and Russian forces. Now, we also know from a statement from the UK that they said that they helped the United States to board this Russian-flagged tanker, and they provided air surveillance and naval support vessel as well. And they also had their bases open to American military assets as well. Now, in a statement, the British Defense Ministry said that while initially flying a false flag, the tanker had turned off its transponders while at sea and sought to reflag the vessel while being pursued. Now, they also said that the UK took the action because the vessel was sanctioned by the US under its measures against Iran. So very, dramatic statements coming out from the UK and the US military as well as Russia on this ship's efforts to evade authorities, and really what we saw was real time. This was, really being followed in real time by social media observers and analysts who really tracked this vessel as the U.S. moved military assets to the U.K. in recent days. So just a dramatic series of events unfolding today, Drew.
Now, the Bella 1 had been linked to Russia. It changed its flag to a Russian one during this pursuit, and there were reports of a possible Russian submarine escorting it. Moscow came out with a statement condemning its seizure. Does this risk inflaming tensions between the U.S. and Russia?
That's right. This raises big questions about how Russia will respond and whether things could escalate from there. It's an incredibly unusual situation, though, and it appears that, this oil tanker switched to a Russian flag while being pursued by the U.S., hoping that would provide it some protection, which it didn't ultimately. And Russia reportedly deployed a submarine to help escort the ship as well, right? But President Trump ordered its seizure anyhow. So we'll really need to see how Putin responds to this slap in the face in his own backyard, Drew.
Secretary Noem is saying that these seizures were coordinated by the Justice Department, Defense Department, and Homeland Security. That is a lot of manpower in this operation. What do you think this says about the U.S.'s plans for seizures of this type moving forward?
That's right. You know, the message we're hearing from the Trump administration with this move is that it shows that it's serious about stopping these dark fleet tankers wherever they're operating, right? This trip really tried a very new strategy to avoid U.S. seizure, and it didn't work. So that might make these tankers less likely to try this again. But this dark fleet has been avoiding sanctions for years, so I expect we'll see both sides continue to pursue new strategies while the U.S. continues to kind of chase after them and seize some of these tankers, Drew.
Now, all of this, of course, days after the capture of Nicolas Maduro. What is the White House saying about what this seizure or seizures like this could mean for the future military actions surrounding Venezuela?
The message coming from the White House that they're 100% behind these operations and they're not going to stop. They're going to continue going after these sanctioned oil tankers, Drew. And essentially, the White House saying that they're completely in the right because these vessels have all been sanctioned by the U.S. and they're going to continue pursuing this dark fleet as of right now, Drew.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Sarakshi Rai, thanks so much for your time.